All right, so this Screencastify video is to show you how to make your timeline for your timeline project. I'll run through this quickly and hopefully you can use this video to help you figure it out. So the first thing you're going to do when you open this timeline video, you'll see this table. So step one, make a list of important events in your personal life. List the events and list the number of years ago that they happened. When I do that, mine looks something like this. Birth, moved to Alberta, my brother was born, went to school, etc. Then I've got the number of years ago that those events happened. So in order to make a timeline, the next thing we're going to do, we're going to take a piece of paper or do this digitally, and we're literally just going to draw a line down it. I made this too high, but I'm going to put my line right here in the middle of my page. Then, since I didn't actually put it in the middle of the page, I'm going to move it down a little bit so it actually goes in the middle of the page. If you're doing this by hand, that's completely fine. Then, next step, measure your line. I click on my line, I see my line is 26 centimeters long. Okay, good. Now I know that my birth is going to go at one end of the timeline, and right now is going to go at the other end of the timeline. So I can write those two events on before I do anything more. Birth and now. I should probably make little lines that connect up to those. Okay, next step is to figure out exactly how to put everything else on the timeline. You're going to put your personal events up on the top of your line. So in order to figure that out, I know my line is 26 centimeters long. I take the 26 centimeters long and I divide it by the number of years I've been alive. For me, that means my scale is 0.65 centimeters per year. 0.65 centimeters per year. Length of line divided by number of years I was alive. 0.65 centimeters per year. Next step, I'm going to go and I'm going to multiply each of the years of the events by the scale. This tells me how many centimeters back each event needs to be from the end of the timeline. So when I look at this, the pandemic should be 0.65 centimeters from the end of the timeline. That would be here. You'll need to measure more precisely since you're actually handing this in. So that is going to be where the pandemic goes. Then we need to look at all the other events. So let's see. I moved to Alberta 24.1 centimeters from the end of the timeline. So again, I would take the end of my timeline. I would measure backwards 24.1 centimeters. That should be about here. So I will add that event. You're going to repeat that process for everything in your personal timeline. When you've got all 12 events from your personal timeline added, then you can move on to the next step. For your next step, you need to figure out how to plot the events from when the Earth formed. I'm going to show you how to do that. So you know your timeline is however many centimeters long. For me, it was 26. To figure out the scale, I'll take 26 and I'll divide it by the age of the Earth, 400 or 4,500 million years. So 26 divided by 4,500 gives me 0.00578. So 0.00578 centimeters is 1 million years. Then I take this number that I got from the length of my line divided by the age of the Earth, and I multiply it by every event in the table. So obviously, the Earth forming is going to be at the end of the timeline, And now is going to be at the beginning of the time, or the current is going to match with now. So now I need to figure out how all these events end up. Well, the oldest microfossils would be 20.23 centimeters from the end of my timeline. So I go back, I start adding events. Start of Earth would be right here. Then the oldest microfossils. I need to measure backwards 20 centimeters from that point. So you would measure backwards 20 centimeters. I think that's what it was. Let's take a good look. 20.23 centimeters. So I measure backwards 20.23 centimeters. You would measure precisely since this is your project. And you would put that there. Then I keep working through this. My next event, oxygen builds up in the atmosphere. That is 11.5 centimeters from the end of the timeline. So I find the end of the timeline, I measure backwards 11.5 centimeters. That's around there somewhere. And I can add that event. So that's all there is to it. You add your personal events on the top, the Earth's events on the bottom. Once you have both of those, you can start to compare the percentages of the Earth's history to events in your own life. I hope this video helped you figure out how the scaling works. Send me a message if you need more help.